Hello and welcome to Annie's Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Phantom Pilot of Sandown Airport. Holly Arnold had always been a seeker of shadows, drawn to the places where light faltered and secrets lingered. A journalist by trade, she thrived on unraveling mysteries that others dismissed as mere whispers. When she moved to the Isle of Wight, its jagged cliffs and windswept shores calling to her restless spirit, she thought she'd found a quiet refuge from the clamour of London. But the island had other plans for her, and it began with the rumours that drifted through the pubs and tea rooms of Sandown. A ghostly pilot haunted the abandoned runways of Sandown Airport, doomed to relive a fatal crash from decades past. Holly was no stranger to skepticism. She'd spent years chasing leads that evaporated like mist, but something about this story gripped her. Perhaps it was the way the locals spoke of it, half in jest, half in dread, or maybe it was the pull of the unknown, tugging at her like a tide. She took a job at the Isle of Wight Gazette *, a modest paper with yellow archives, and settled into a cottage overlooking the sea. The airport, though, became her obsession. Sandown Airport was a skeletal remnant of its former self. The control tower leaned slightly, as if weary from years of neglect, and the hangars gaped like open wounds, their rusted doors groaning in the wind. Grass sprouted through cracks in the runway, and the air carried the faint scent of oil and decay. It was a place forgotten by time, yet alive with an eerie stillness that made Holly's skin prickle. Her first visit came on a grey October afternoon. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds, and a drizzle slicked the tarmac beneath her boots. She met Mr. Jenkins, the airport's caretaker, a stooped figure with a face carved by years of salt and solitude. "You're here about the pilot, aren't you?" he asked. His eyes glinted with something Holly couldn't quite place, amusement, perhaps, or warning. "Tell me what you know," she said. Mr. Jenkins scratched his chin. "It's been years since I last saw him, but I'll never forget it. Middle of the night, locking up the tower, heard an engine sputter to life, old-fashioned, like something from the war. I stepped out, and there it was, a plane, rolling down the runway. No lights in the cockpit, no sound but that damn engine, then poof, gone, like it was never there." "Anyone else seen it?" "Plenty. Pilots, kids sneaking in on dares, even a tourist once. All say the same. A plane appears, races toward takeoff, then vanishes. Some reckon it's Captain Eddie Blackwood, killed in a crash back in '52. Others think it's just the wind playing tricks." The fog thickened, curling around the hangars like ghostly fingers. She imagined the plane emerging from the haze, its propellers slicing the silence. A shiver ran through her, but she chalked it up to the cold. That night she couldn't sleep. The story gnawed at her. She grabbed her flashlight, camera, and a thermos of coffee, then drove back to the airport. The fog was denser now, swallowing her headlights. She parked near the runway and stepped out, the damp air clinging to her skin. She walked slowly, her boots crunching on gravel. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant crash of waves against the cliffs. Then she heard it, a low, mechanical hum, faint at first, growing louder. Her breath caught. She swung her flashlight around, but the beam barely pierced the mist. A shape loomed ahead. A plane, its fuselage glinting faintly, rolled out of the fog. Its propellers spun, kicking up eddies of mist, and its landing lights flickered like dying stars. It barreled toward her, faster now, the roar of its engine deafening. Holly froze, heart pounding, as the plane closed the distance. She could see its outline clearly, vintage, single engine, a relic of another era. Just as it was about to strike, it dissolved into nothing, leaving only the echo of its roar. She stumbled back, gasping. Her hands trembled as she fumbled for her camera, but the moment was gone. She had seen it. The Phantom Pilot was real. The next morning, Holly threw herself into research. She scoured the Gazette archives, her fingers blackening with newsprint. After hours of digging, she found it, a grainy headline from November 1952. A pilot killed in Sandown crash. Captain Edward Eddie Blackwood, 32, had died when his plane plummeted moments after takeoff. The article was sparse, mentioning only that investigators blamed a faulty engine. But a sidebar hinted at rumors, jealous rivals, hushed arguments in the pilot's lounge, a sense that not all was as it seemed. Holly tracked down Margaret Henshaw, Eddie's fiancée at the time of his death. She lived in a weathered cottage near Shanklin, her hair white as sea foam, her hands trembling as she poured tea. "He was my world," Margaret said. Eddie was the best pilot on the island, fearless, steady, but he had enemies. Other flyers grinned with envy. I begged him to be careful, but he laughed it off. Holly asked. Margaret's eyes darkened. "I've always believed it. No proof, mind you, just a feeling. Eddie checked that plane himself. If something went wrong, it wasn't an accident." She returned to the airport's archives, a dusty room beneath the control tower. There, among mildewed files, she found Eddie's slight log. His handwriting was neat, precise, but the final entries chilled her. October 28, 1952. Engine sounded off today, checked it twice. Nothing obvious, nerves. Maybe. October 30. Saw someone near the hangar after dark. Too far to tell who. I need to watch my back. November 1. Last flight tomorrow. Something's not right. Can't shake it. Holly stared at the page, her mind racing. Eddie had known. He'd suspected foul play, but he'd flown anyway. The hauntings escalated. One night, as Holly typed notes in her cottage, a shadow passed her window, a tall figure in a flight jacket, gone when she looked again. Another time, driving past the airport, she glimpsed a plane on the runway, only for it to vanish as she slowed. Sleep eluded her. Dreams brought the roar of engines and the scent of burning fuel. She needed answers. She contacted Madame Clara, a local medium with a reputation for eccentricity, and convinced her to hold a séance at the airport. They met in the control tower at midnight, the air thick with incense and tension. Clara lit candles, their flames dancing in the draught, and began to chant. "Edward Blackwood, we seek your presence. Speak to us." A wind rattled the windows, none were open. The candles guttered out, plunging them into darkness. Holly's breath fogged in front of her. Then he appeared. Eddie stood in the center of the room, his form shimmering like heat haze. His flight suit was torn, his face gone, but his eyes burned with purpose. He raised a hand, pointing toward the hangar, and vanished. Holly led Clara to the hangar, her flashlight trembling. Inside, shrouded in dust, was the wreckage of Eddie's plane, preserved as a grim relic. She climbed into the cockpit, her fingers tracing the controls. Something caught her eye, a metal plate on the engine, pried loose. Beneath it, a fuel line showed signs of tampering, its edges frayed in a way no accident could explain. Sabotage. The word hit her like a blow. Before she could process it, the hangar doors slammed shut. The temperature plummeted, and Eddie's ghost materialized again, his voice a rasp in her mind. "They killed me. He's still here. Find him." The air grew heavy. Shadows writhed along the walls. Holly stumbled out, her resolve hardening. She had to finish this. Holly compiled a list of Eddie's rivals from the archives, pilots active in the 50s, now scattered across the island or buried beneath it. One name recurred: Reginald Thorne, a brash flyer who'd clashed with Eddie over competition routes. He was alive, 85, living in a ramshackle house near Bembridge. She visited under the guise of writing a historical piece. Reginald was wiry, his eyes sharp despite his age, and he greeted her with suspicion. Eddie Blackwood. He snorted when she broached the subject. Overrated. Always hogging the spotlight. Holly pressed gently. Some say his crash wasn't an accident. Reginald's jaw tightened. People talk nonsense. Planes fail. It happened. But his words rang hollow. Holly recalled a photo from the archives. Reginald near Eddie's plane, a wrench in hand. Hours before the crash, she decided to bluff. "I found evidence," she said, meeting his gaze. A tampered fuel line. Someone confessed on tape, an accomplice. Maybe. Pointed to you. It was a lie, but it worked. Reginald's face crumpled. "I didn't mean for him to die," he muttered. "I just wanted him grounded. Out of my way. Fixed the line to leak. That's all. How was I to know it'd blow?" Holly's recorder caught every word. She left, adrenaline surging, and handed the confession to the police. Reginald was arrested, though his age meant a trial was unlikely, justice in name only. That night, Holly returned to the runway. The fog was thin, the air still. She waited, half expecting Eddie's plane to appear. Instead, a breeze brushed her cheek, soft and fleeting, like a thank you. The haunting stopped. Her article ran the next week. The phantom pilot laid to rest. It was a sensation, cementing her name at the Asterisk Gazette. But as she stood on the cliffs, watching the sea churn below. Holly knew the island had changed her. She'd faced the dead, unraveled their truth, and found a piece of herself in the process. The runway stretched silent behind her, no longer a stage for tragedy, just a scar on the earth, finally at peace. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.